Now let us move into the second part of today's session, session number 3, the theory. And today we are going to see some theory about the inner energy which is placed within each and every one of us. Now you can see in the subtle chart on the screen how it represents all the energy centers and energy channels which are placed within our body. We have talked about it briefly in our previous sessions. So if you have not seen the previous sessions, we would recommend you to go back and check the details there. Now in the left corner on the bottom, you can see the term mentioned as pure energy. It is clearly indicated with an arrow mark that it is placed inside an inverted triangle. This pure energy is coiled up in 3.5 coils and is laying dormant inside the sacrum bone, which is represented as the inverted triangle in the subtle chart. Now here we can see a better representation of the inner energy within us. This energy in Sanskrit is known as Kundalini. Kundal in Sanskrit means coiled up. That means this energy is laying dormant in our sacrum bone and coiled up, as represented in this picture. It is coiled up in 3.5 coils for a very particular reason and calculation. If you see from the center, it rotates in a clockwise direction, increases in diameter, and spirals out in 3.5 coils. This is how the Kundalini energy is placed within each and every one of us. Now when we talk about spirals, we will be surprised to know that these spirals are formed in nature everywhere around us. Starting from a microscopic level up to the biggest macroscopic level, we can find these spirals naturally formed all around us. Now let us see some examples of the spirals which are formed in nature. Now here in this picture, we can see a representation of a chromosome. Here we can clearly see it is formed with a helical double spiral. These chromosomes are at a very, very microscopic level, and they are the very building blocks of life itself. From the moment life started evolving from a single-celled organism such as an amoeba and evolved up to the state of a human being, a very complex thinking machine, all the genetic information has been passed down generation after generation through these chromosomes. Here is another example of a pictorial representation of a chromosome, and here we can clearly see the helical double spiral formed. To be clear again, these are at a very, very microscopic level, and scientists have discovered how these chromosomes are placed within us, carrying our genetic code generation after generation. If we move into a little bigger example, here we can see a plant from which a stem is growing out, and as it grows out, it forms a spiral and it moves into a circle. Here is another example of a plant where the stem is growing out into a spiral. This can be found in nature everywhere around us if we pay attention to it and look closely. Now if we move into a little bigger example, we can see this seashell here. This is a cross section of a seashell, meaning it has been cut in the center axis. And if we see how clearly and beautifully this spiral has been formed within the seashell, it starts from the center, goes around increasing in diameter, and the curve follows a particular formula and dimension and forms this spiral moving outside very beautifully. Here we can see another example of a seashell. The body of the shell is formed from the center point, moving outside in a spiral, forming beautiful colors, and the whole body of the shell is formed based on the geometry of a spiral. Now, if we move to a little bigger example, here we can see in the picture a photograph taken from a space station of a hurricane. We can clearly see how the clouds are formed and are revolving constantly around the eye of the hurricane, the center axis. The clouds are revolving around the axis in a spiral formation. Here is yet another example of a hurricane. And this picture, also taken from a space station, we can clearly see how the clouds are going around in a spiral around the eye of the hurricane. Now, if we move to the biggest examples, here in the picture, we can see a spiral galaxy. Every speck of light is a star, and this galaxy is made up of billions and billions of stars put together. And we can see how the stars are revolving around the center of the galaxy in a spiral formation. To have a comparison, our sun is just one star. So here we can see billions of such stars put together in a cluster to form this galaxy, but yet they revolve uniformly around the center of the axis of the galaxy in a spiral formation. Here is yet another example of another spiral galaxy, and here also we can see how the clusters of stars are going around the center of the galaxy and forming a beautiful spiral pattern. Hence, we can see the examples of spiral being formed in nature right from a microscopic level of a chromosome up to the biggest example of galaxies, which are the building blocks of the entire universe. So this energy which is inside every one of us is also formed as a spiral, and it is laying dormant in our sacrum bone. As you see in the picture, it represents the anatomy of the sacrum bone. It is one of the last bones in the spinal column which is housing the main spinal cord, the main spinal nerve. When we are born, there are 5 separate sacrum bone, but as we grow, it all grows, fuses together and becomes one bone. This bone is one of the largest bones in the spinal column, and we can see clearly it is looking like an inverted triangle. Hence, the sacrum bone is always represented as an inverted triangle in the subtle chart. Now, inside the inverted triangle, we can see the energy is represented spirally coiled up inside. And hence, in the subtle chart, this is how the Kundalini energy is represented, laying dormant inside the inverted triangular bone known as the sacrum bone. Now we will show you an animation of how the Kundalini energy awakens and connects us to the all-pervading power to give us our yoga or self-realization. Here we can see a representation of a person sitting in meditation. The Kundalini energy is glowing now. Below the energy is the first energy center. The energy does not go down, but it climbs up, pierces through the second center, climbs to the next level to the center of the navel, the third center, It moves next to the level of the heart, which is the heart center. Then it pierces to the fifth energy center at the base of our neck, and then climbs further at the level of the forehead, pierces through the forehead, and finally it comes out of our head at the fontanelle bone area through the last energy center and connects us to the all-pervading power to give us this union or yoga. We can also see the different energy centers are represented as different colors, and this is how they actually look like inside us. And the fingertips are also glowing in a particular color, which represents every fingertip is a particular energy center because the nerve endings terminate in our fingertips. And this is how we can decode our problems. We can also imagine the Kundalini energy to be made up like a rope. Now we all know how a rope is made. It is made up of tiny strands of thread wound together intricately to form a thick rope. The tiny strand of thread does not have much of strength and can be easily torn apart with our bare hands. But when they are wound together to form a rope, they are very strong and they are able to lift any amount of load. In the same way, the Kundalini energy is also made up of tiny strands of energy, tiny strings of energy. Our teacher says that there is a particular calculation of 7 into 3, which is 21, raised to the power 108. So we can imagine there are billions and billions of strands of energy which are thin hair-like strands wound together to form this energy known as the Kundalini or the inner energy within us, and this is how it is coiled up in our sacrum bone. Now here we can see a picture of a rope in a much close-up view. Here we can clearly see how the rope is made up of tiny strands of energy which are intricately wound and twisted together to form this thick rope. This is exactly how the Kundalini energy is made up of. So, when the Kundalini energy awakens for the first time, it tries to climb up our spinal cord, but since our energy centers are not in a balance, they are constricted and not open fully. Hence, not all of the strands are able to pass to the next energy center, so many of them fall down and only a few strands go up to the next level. And again at the next energy center, due to the restrictions, some more strands fall down and only a few more strands get filtered and go up. So in this way, when the Kundalini energy reaches to the top of our head, only a few hair-like strands of energy pierce out of our fontanelle bone area and give us this connection or yoga. So we can say in a way that we have been able to achieve our yoga in a very, very small proportion in the initial session of meditation through Sahaja Yoga. But with regular practice and gaining more theoretical knowledge and understanding how the energy centers function within us, we can cleanse our energy centers on a daily basis, open our energy centers more and more, and allow more and more strands of the energy to pass through. And that is how we are able to grow in our meditation, deepen our meditation. And when we reach a state of meditative being, we are able to solve all our physical, emotional, mental, and energetical imbalances by correcting our energy centers. Now we will show you an exercise which we do every day before and after we finish the meditation. This exercise is called as raising of the Kundalini energy and putting ourselves in a protective shield.